Jonathan Sinanian, the first Armenian born in California, had grown into a well-scrubbed boy of 10. From the sidelines, he watched the 4th of July parade. Later, he was forced to stand for a photograph. Susie Markarian was the queen in the parade. The earliest settlers, or those who had money, became the aristocracy of the Armenian colony. Not all of them became wealthy, however. Many of the newcomers worked for low wages and under poor conditions for their Armenian employers. Others worked for the railroad for 50 cents a day, or for an acre of land. But because they felt they needed to feed their families, they took the money. Stories are retold of daily meals of bread and tanabur, a mixture of barley and diluted yogurt.
As I look at that picture, I'm reminded of the Hagop Ejderian home. They had an old-fashioned garden that was bordered with soda bottles, and the aroma of hot biscuits always came out of that kitchen. But that was their home when I was a very little girl.
As more Armenians arrived, a colony developed on the west side of town, which is now a part of Chinatown. The newcomers brought with them their strong family ties, their food and customs, their friendly city rivalries. But even in the turmoil of a new country, they pursued their urge for learning and their pride in their heritage. As early as 1890, they formed the Armenian Library Union, 2 years before the establishment of the Fresno Public Library. The purpose was to make Armenians better citizens in their new home. The first 15 years of the new century were years of happiness and progress for the Armenians of Fresno, particularly for the women, who were being emancipated from traditions. New families came into being and a stable foundation established for future generations.
These are my parents, Mugardich and Lydia Aristakesian. My mother was a picture bride. She never met her husband until she came to Fresno, although they exchanged pictures. And the match was made between my father's sister and my grandmother. My mother was a teacher, and she was the church organist. But as it would happen, her life changed its course as she had to pack all her dreams and her belongings in her suitcases and come to the United States to marry her future husband. And life was very difficult for her because she was brought up in a genteel atmosphere and she had to go out and work in these packing houses. And, you know, we had picnics just like in the clan gatherings in the old country. Soon, we said, in another generation, the Armenians will disappear. Our language will be gone. It was not a happy thought, but we felt it in our bones that our children would not remain Armenian. Those days back in the 1900s and 1910s were the golden years in Fresno. We loved this valley with its rivers. It was so much like old Armenia. We were happy. We went fishing and camping. We built churches, schools, new homes. During these years, the Armenians of Fresno marveled at Yosemite and the other natural wonders of California.
But it was not easy to become American and to retain their own cultural identities. Sometimes the choices were forced upon the newcomers. The original settlers from Marzavan were Protestants. Soon after their arrival, they were surprised that the missionaries had not built a congregational church in Fresno. So they organized a community church. The majority of its members and the minister were non-Armenians. Before long, the minister complained that the Armenians could not speak English well. He also claimed they were stingy in contributions to the church. The Armenians replied that they were sending money to the needy people back in Marzavan, Turkey. Still, the pastor refused hymn books to them and compelled them to sit separately. As a result of this harassment, the Armenians pulled out of the congregational church, and in 1897 organized the first Armenian Presbyterian Church. Soon afterwards, others established the Pilgrim Armenian Congregational Church. Some left the traditional churches, joining the Salvation Army or other small religious groups. Religion had become an avenue for assimilation. On October 4th, 1900, Armenian Apostolics dedicated the Holy Trinity Church. In 1913, it burned down. A new church was built across the railroad tracks at the corner of Ventura and M Streets, a few blocks distant from the First Armenian Presbyterian Church. The Holy Trinity Church became the focus of Armenian migration from the west to the east side of town. This area became the closest thing to a little Armenia they were to have in America. The noted author and playwright William Saroyan grew up in this neighborhood and immortalized in his book, My Name is Arum, the life of the first Armenian generation in Fresno. During the first 10 years of the new century, the Armenian population increased 400% in California. Many were leaving their homeland because of Turkish persecution and tyranny. Around Fresno, the Armenians went into farming in great numbers. By 1910, over one-third of the almost 4,000 Armenians in Fresno County lived outside of the city in small towns. During these pre-World War I years, Jonathan Sinanian had matured into a man. He was a hard-working farmer, living a hermit-like existence. Through hard work and a flair for enterprise, the Armenians in the space of a quarter of a century rose from laborers, peddlers, and craftsmen to merchants, packing house magnates, great landowners, and industrialists. Armenian enterprise in agriculture continued. Malcolm Markarian leveled new land for his fig orchards to become in 1902 the largest in the world. By 1913, he was the fig king of America and was directing the planting of the 13,000-acre Faulkner fig gardens. Years later, the area was to be a plush housing development from which the Armenians were excluded. In the years before the First World War, Fresno became a thriving agricultural metropolis of 40,000.
We published 9 Armenian newspapers in Fresno. There were 25 Armenian cultural organizations and 10 Armenian political parties and compatriotic unions and many old country coffee houses where old-timers debated about politics and religion. Fresno became a powerful influence upon the thinking of Armenians everywhere.
An Armenian school was established at the Holy Trinity Church in 1907. At this time, most of the Armenian children attended Emerson Public School, located in the center of Armenian town. 90% of the students were Armenian.
In those days, the Armenian children were called Turks by some of their classmates. These were fighting words, so one day the Armenian students decided to fight. Half-brothers George and John Seropian, K. Arakelian,